Had some pretty extensive, not intense necessarily, but conversations with other parents over there. Our kids' school is a nonprofit, and so they were like kind of like expressing some challenges with the school, and I was like, y'all, running nonprofits is like it's a whole other beast. So we got into some pretty powerful conversation there. Um, yeah. So what's up, everybody? Here we are. There's nobody here with us, but this should be recorded. And anybody that shows up and checks out this video afterwards, let me greet you and say hello. Happy to be here with you. Me and Jeff Love.
All right, glad to be
Yep.
here.
Yep. I am like, as soon as I sat down to do this, it brought me back to Tristan and I used to do. I called it on psilocybin. I don't know if you ever saw those. I don't know if you were a part of
Oh,
Sanctuary when we were doing those. Yeah, I used to do. I think it was like every other week. I would do a 90-minute live stream just to like engage in conversation and whatnot, and called it on psilocybin. And those were fun. Tristan and I would get on here and just kind of shoot the shit on mushrooms and or about mushrooms, not on mushrooms. Uh,
huh.
although there were some times that I microdosed.
Well, why not shoot the shit about mushrooms while on
All
mushrooms?
on mushrooms. Where are you at with microdosing? Have you been? Do you regularly, or have you been?
I was interestingly enough, you brought that up because I was just kind of thinking about that today. Maybe even a little bit yesterday. So I guess I'm just noticing that uh, I haven't felt a huge need in my life to microdose and recognizing how beneficial that was in the times that I do need it and in the times that I have needed it, the times that it's made a difference and recognizing really a little bit of my own growth in that aspect of really understanding that getting to the point of being in this space without the medicine is the teacher of the medicine. That's what it's teaching anyway. So
Mm,
it's like
mhm,
me being able to have that self recognition that I'm processing. I'm dealing with difficult things. I'm able to change um, patterns that I see and that I recognize. I'm like I said, integrating new things into my life and not having to lean so hardly on. But I find it extremely beneficial, especially for people who are new in the process of consuming their sacrament and those that are working through things that have more of a therapeutic um, aspect to them. And even with spirituality, microdosing really moved me into understanding meditation
mm.
much more than a larger journey did. So uh, even though it had amazing uses for me along the way, I guess it was just nice to see that I've gotten to the space where I'm understanding the things that it was explaining to me anyway, or the things that I was learning in that space anyway, and
Mhm.
I'm able to do that without it. So
I've been
uh,
actually feeling called towards it. I meant to eat some mushrooms this morning, and I didn't for whatever reason or another. But it's kind of like it's not really that I felt like I needed it per se or anything like that. It's more like I was remembering back when I was growing all the time and how I mean, I don't know how you are, but when I'm growing mushrooms, I'm eating mushrooms. Like even though
mm,
I just can't not nibble on mushrooms when I'm growing them. It's like, oh, there's a little pin or a little piece breaks off. I'm gonna eat it. And I have some ovoids that are kind of stuck up. And I was like, oh man, I would like to just nibble on some of those. And I didn't do it. I didn't do it. So we do have some folks here, just so you know, Jeff. I don't know if you're
oh
seeing
yeah.
the chat. Yeah, I didn't have the chat pulled up here, so we got a number of folks here. I'm going to try to stay up on the chat as much as possible, y'all, but I don't want to get too distracted from our conversation. So what I would say is, if anybody wants to join the conversation, I can should be able to click you in. Let me. There used to be. Yep. Bada bing, bada boom. So, if anybody has a question or you want to join the conversation, I will post that link right in the chat there. And I'll let you, all you gotta do is click the link and then I'll let you in or not, but most likely I will. I don't see why I wouldn't. Uh, but just kind of starting the conversation off here with what I had hoped that we would, which is this aspect of a relationship. And I guess like one of the first questions that I wanted to for both of us to explore here with folks. And just a heads up, those of you who are here, um, yeah, and I want to say shout out to the To Be Better family. I see y'all out there logging in and participating. Very much appreciate that, and everybody else that's with us tonight, though. Um, but like looking at this, like the question being why mushrooms. And before we get into that, I will say that's what I meant to say. I got a little sidetracked there. That this conversation that we're doing tonight, and then we're also going to have another live stream on Sunday night, same time, 6:30, um, is really to introduce y'all to our upcoming 3-day free workshop that we're going to be giving. That's next weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Jeff and I are going to be giving a 3-day workshop that is going to cover a variety of topics. We'll talk about those topics later on, but right now I want to get into the conversation around why mushrooms. So, Jeff, why mushrooms?
Mm. Well, why not mushrooms? You know, uh, well, for me, I can only speak from my own experience, and my story of why mushrooms starts with all the things that didn't work, all the things that I tried that uh, put me on the path to finding what did work. Um, so in my experience, suffering from PTSD, anger, anxiety, coming out of the military. Um, my experience was multiple different medications within a 2-year period, so many that I couldn't keep track of. That didn't do or find help me find myself like what I was hoping to. And alcohol didn't work. The closest thing that I did find was a release through physical exertion, going to the gym, being physically active, and read a thing one time about moms microdosing in California, and I ended up uh, microdosing, and I did a lot of research and reading about it, but I ended up finding my way to mushrooms. And when I did find my way to microdosing, it was like, wow, I'm getting these benefits without any of the side effects of the medications. I'm finally finding a way to vocalize some of the things that I'm feeling. I'm finding a way to process some of the thoughts that don't even have words to them that I've been carrying for so many years. Um, Learning to what meditation is to me. Learning, so mushrooms just with a minor, just a short period of time, and really a minor amount of psilocybin, being that I was microdosing the majority of the time, it just changed so much in my life, the way that I had hoped that the medication, the therapy, the things that they had kind of promised me along the way, that this would help, or that would help, or this would be different. Um, and then in my experience, I was exposed to a spiritual awakening, which is something that was I thought to be dead inside of me, and so why mushrooms is because of everything that I've experienced through my use of mushrooms, through the way that it's enabled me to have a different perspective, not only on myself, but on the idea of how to heal, the idea of what I want to be, who I want to present myself as, um, all of these things. It made such a huge impact in my life that my personal experience is just why didn't I find them sooner?
Mm, mm.
You know,
Well, you said, if I'm not mistaken, you had some mushroom experiences back in like high school and growing like pre-military, right?
Yes, yeah. But none of my experiences were internal. None of my
Mm,
experiences had anything to do with trauma or, even questioning who I was as an individual. It was
mm-hmm,
just hanging out
mm-hmm.
and having a good time
Well, I mean, that's
and
another good
laughing.
reason.
And yeah, yeah, like why? What a great way to commune with friends, and what a wonderful time as well. But I guess in my experience, I had just never been exposed to a therapeutic type
Hmm.
feel or use for them. It was always social and fun. So for me, it was, like I said, I did a lot of research going into even, you know, seeking out where to find them because, or I did a lot of research before even getting to that point
Mm,
because it was like, here's another thing that sounds too good to be true. Here's another thing that sounds like,
mm-hmm.
and I think something that I really want to put out and say right here is that this worked for me and it is working for me. This may not be right for everyone. This may not be that thing that I I believe that we can all have our eyes opened. We can all have that awareness moment, that aha time, that can happen in many different ways. And I can only speak for my experience. So I don't want to say, oh, this is the only way, or
Right.
this is definitely definitely the way that has impacted me the most.
Right. And I see some stuff going on in the chat there too about SSRIs. And, just to speak to that, that there are certainly, there's a portion of the population that SSRIs are helpful for. So like, that's one of our perspectives within Sanctuary. And just, I think Jeff and I both individually, like there's no judgment on what anybody's doing. And if you like work with mushrooms and you decide they're not for you, then like that's great too. You know, kind of a part of that though is that we have been conditioned to avoid challenging material within our own psyche, with our own spirituality, and
Mm,
I think is like Chris was saying in there, like they're not going to mask. You're gonna face some shit when you eat mushrooms, and
mm,
you know that's that's challenging for some and initially especially, but when you start to experience like the space that clears out and how much relief that you get from finally facing the stuff that needs to be faced, it's just like, oh, I don't know, it's just such a relief, man. I mean, we talk about this and I know a fair amount that it's really not even about the experience so much as like the afterwards, like the days and weeks following a mushroom experience are. Oh man, it's hard to compare to anything else. I mean, like I've done a fair amount of LSD.
mm,
I've worked with ayahuasca a few times. Um, DMT, smoked some DMT, but even still, for me, mushrooms are there's just a different kind of quality to them, and it's been challenging for me to kind of speak to it in these terms. And again, like this is just my perspective, like you're saying, everybody's got a different approach to this thing, but like one of the great powers that I perceive of the mushroom, which I have experienced with ayahuasca and DMT and to a certain extent LSD, but having worked with mushrooms over the years is like two things. One is I understand this and experience it as truly access point to a spiritual world. So like we got the neurochemical stuff going on and all that, and that's a reality. And to expand my awareness and become cognizant that there is another world that we are enmeshed in, it like that has done so much to give me hope, to alleviate my depression or my suicidal ideations and all the negative mental health stuff. And so like I personally, that's one of the reasons that they are so like that's one of the reasons why mushrooms for me. And then the other one, I know that you and I have talked about this a lot, Jeff, is that particularly in cultivating, but I'm also finding too in wild harvesting, which I've got some treats I'm going to share with y'all in just a minute here. Um, there's a relationship. It's like
mm,
if you're taking meds, or if you're like even LSD, I mean, I can say like I can have a relationship with the chemical or the compound or whatever, but like I can speak to having a biological, direct, like living relationship with the mushrooms. And that, like, that's important within the experience. And it's maybe even more important in the integration. Because, like, again, like it's really powerful when cultivation is in my life. Um, but even with wild harvest, like when I eat mushrooms and then for a couple weeks or a couple months after a mushroom experience, like if I'm tending to a cultivated batch, or if I am even like I'll there's a an ovoid patch that I walk past on the reg. Like it's like I like have to walk past or even step over this mulch um like several times a week. And I know that that mycelium that's there is aware of me. It might not be like looking at me like I'm aware of it, but it is a sentient living organism that is aware of me. And to like have that relationship, it just it's like adds a texture to the experience and to the integration. I don't know where else I could get that. Like I've had it with cannabis, growing cannabis plants, and consuming the cannabis plants that I've grown. It has been really powerful. But mushrooms, just by their very nature, and like this whole like I said, for me, this interface with a spirit world,
Mm.
and then having that working relationship has been a really, really big reason of why I have continued to come back to the mushroom.
For me, it's really big. I mean, I cultivate almost nonstop, so there's almost always mycelium growing. There's always liquid culture growing. There's always some form um, of mushroom cultivation that is happening around me. In those times that somehow I'm not, I usually find it missing. I find it
Mm.
like there's a spirit, there's a entity to this
Mhm.
that is in my energy field, that is around me, that I wake up around, that I spend my day around, and I can notice when that's missing. I can tell when it's not there. So just the act of cultivation to me is, the beginning of that relationship. It's the beginning. It's and I don't even like to say that I cultivate. You and I have discussed this. I really feel more like I'm just a steward of the process. I'm
Mhm.
only the spores knew where they were going to go. They already knew my hands were going to touch them. They already knew that they were going to go through my hands to
Mhm.
get to where they're going to go, to where they're going to end, to the people that they're going to affect.
Mhm.
I'm just a cog in the wheel along the way.
Mhm.
And even knowing that, just feeling, um, you know, feeling that connection to them, um, especially when harvesting, and that connection happens a lot when harvesting, knowing that I don't know where you're going, but I know this is
Mhm.
going to be good.
Mhm.
I know that this is going to, cleaning them up, knowing that they're not even for me, that they're going somewhere else, and just taking that same care for them. So yeah, uh, it's very impactful to be able to cultivate. And it's very impactful for me to cultivate and to partake in my own cultivation,
Mhm.
you know, just to feel that process. And then, um, also to get feedback from others who have consumed,
Mhm.
and to, it's almost like closure to that cultivation process from the beginning all the way to the end,
Yeah.
and how that, so yeah, there's a large, I feel a very impactful relationship with cultivating. And I would agree. I think that having that relationship from a cultivation standpoint makes me, I don't want to say honor more, but makes it even more important that I continue the full processes of processing and integrating and, doing the work, putting in the effort and the energy, and it's just that relationship helps to keep that process uh, transparent and pure, and instead of turning it into something that could just be fun or could just be recreational.
Well, you got me thinking about back in, like, God. So I was slinging shrooms big time back in the day. For those of y'all that don't know, Courtney and I were arrested in 2015, and we were running ceremonies and selling black market, and that never felt good. And praying for a way out of it, and well, the way out of it came through us getting arrested, and it was a it didn't seem like a blessing at the time, but come to find out it has been. And one of the things that really I just it just like really kind of drove me crazy was not being able to follow up with the overwhelming majority of the people that were getting the mushrooms, because when you're growing them and you're caring for them, and like you say, they know where they're going. Or even like there's a place where they're going. And
Right.
I'm one of these people that does value um a whole lot of what the indigenous taught around these sacred medicines. And one of the things that they taught is that the energy of the person picking or growing the mushroom goes into the medicine itself,
Mm.
right? So, like, I'm feeling a responsibility to the medicine that I'm setting out there. And if I don't know what's happening with it, then, like, I feel like I'm not closing that loop. Right. There's frayed ends that I'm not able to. And so, like, with what we're doing within Sanctuary, that this is a community where people are continuing to come back for the most part. Obviously, there's some people that come in and they move out, and it's all good. People come in and go out and come back in months down the road or whatever. It's all good. But it's like, it means so much to me that I can see the long-term process in the people who we are uh, cultivating or sending these medicines out to. It's so
Mm.
powerful. I see that we got one person that's wanting to hop in the chat here. Someone else said that they wanted to ask a question. So I'll post that link in here again. Anybody that wants to come in and ask a question, you can click that link. I may or may not be able to get to everybody here. We're going to just kind of pop in and out. Before I open it up there with the trip and bring you into this, I'm going to share a little bit of kind of a relationship story that I have with the mushrooms. All right. So I do have some sacred mushrooms with me tonight, but these are completely unregulated in every state except for, I think it's Mississippi. I can't even remember. I need to look it up. It's either Alabama or Mississippi. If somebody wants to look it up online, you can real quick. Amanita muscaria. Amanita muscaria is like the archetypal sacred mushroom. And why I want to speak to this, or how I want to speak to this in terms of relationship, or a couple different ways. So this mushroom, it's a little washed out in the light. This is Amanita muscaria, variation Guesawawi, I believe is the subspecies name of this. This mushroom is the most documented sacred psychoactive mushroom known to man. This is, it is, to my understanding, what I've read in literature is that this is the original, and we want to call it intoxicant, or the original psychoactive before alcohol was ever brewed. This is the thing that our ancestors ate that began to help us experience consciousness in a different way. And while I'll speak to this, or how I'll speak to this in terms of relationships, so this mushroom is a mycorrhizal mushroom, which means it only grows in relationship with certain trees, pine and spruce trees. It is deeply connected to the Santa Claus mythology. I'm not going to get into all that. Courtney, if you're online and you want to share a link to our YouTube video where we talk about the Santa Claus connection, you're welcome to do that. But anyway, we've done all that before. We'll do some more later on down the road. So it's a mycorrhizal mushroom. It can't be cultivated. It's only in symbiosis with other trees, pine and spruce trees. Yesterday, I was at the park with my kids, like I was today, and I was looking for some maitake. And like, there are mushrooms that talk to me. I don't believe it or not, it's fine. There are mushrooms that talk to me, and I've heard maitake, these hen of the woods. I've heard them kind of whispering out there, but I haven't made the effort really. I haven't broken away from all the stuff to go check them out. And I found one yesterday that was just too old to eat. Been kicked around by some kids and stuff, and I was kind of bummed out. And I'm driving down the road, going home, and thinking about maitake and how I didn't get to pick any maitake, and I get inspired, call it this intuition, to go down a different road. Like I haven't been down this way home in a, like, I don't even know, like a couple of years, and something just tells me take this route. And I took this route, and lo and behold, just as I'm driving by, I see out the corner of my eye this big beautiful stand of Amanita muscaria. And so I turned the car around. The kids are like, "Dad, really mushrooms again?" I'm like, "Come on, kids, y'all know who your dad is, of course." And so we go back and pick these mushrooms and bring them home. Now, you can call it coincidence, you can call it a synchronicity at best, but I have been hearing mushrooms for a long time. And I think that anybody can do this. I don't think that I'm anything special. I think that it is all about developing a relationship. So I became obsessed with mushrooms at the age of 19. After my first mushroom trip, I was like, dude, what are mushrooms? This isn't what I thought it was. And so I just became obsessed about all kinds of mushrooms and started listening to mushrooms. And since then have really felt like sincerely like they talk to me. Now, this mushroom here, yes, I see people talking about this mushroom in the chat there. I will also say that the first time I ate this mushroom, the first time I found this mushroom, I was actually on psilocybin at Red River Gorge. Shout out Red River Gorge, one of those beautiful places on earth. And we found some of these mushrooms while on psilocybin, and then took them home. And the next day, I ate one raw. Don't ever do that. Don't ever do that. This mushroom is toxic. Enough of it can kill you. Ibotenic acid is the toxic compound that can be converted into muscimol, which is good for you. It's a neurotropic, psychoactive. There's a lot of health benefits to muscimol. It's a GABA analog, unlike psilocybin, which is a serotonin analog. And I thought I was going to die when I ate this thing raw. So don't ever do that. But you can process them in a way that makes them much safer to consume. Generally, dried form. Some people I know have made teas and whatnot, and tinctures, etc. Uh, but it is a powerful, I wouldn't call it a visionary mushroom so much as it is like a lucid dream mushroom. Gives you in some really dreamy states. And yes, that's the one thing I want to say, or one of the things that I wanted to say about this. So this mushroom is gaining awareness. There's a lot of awareness coming around this mushroom now because people are becoming more aware of mushrooms. They're having their day, thank goodness. And you can find variations of Amanita muscaria products in stores. Please buy them from reputable companies, because there are companies that are being found out there that are producing Amanita products that aren't, that once they're being tested, they don't actually have muscimol in them. There's varying compounds that have been included in some of these out there in the public marketplace. So just be careful. Always want to include the disclaimer that certain mushrooms can kill you, period. Just a little bit of a bite and you're goners. The genus of Amanita is one of the most deadly genus of mushrooms out there. There are so many Amanita species that can absolutely kill you. So this mushroom is an amazing historical, uh, almost like, not artifact, I guess, to an extent. I mean, it's like we have been working with this mushroom for thousands and thousands of years. It has an incredibly rich history, but it requires a real knowledge base, and I believe benefits, as all of these do, from a relationship. So that's what I wanted to kind of give my little spiel about that mushroom and just show them off. Let me do it. Come on, look, just one more time. Look at this. And there's like so many that are in the dryer right now. I just couldn't even. I just had to get some in the dryer. So anyway, be careful
Mm.
with your mushrooms. Have a working relationship with them, and let us bring in Trip and hear what he's got to question to share or comment to share. Hey, Trip, what's going on, brother?
Hey, cool. Thanks for having this. Man, there's actually been so much that I want to say, but I have a meeting at 7, and so I'll try to keep it somewhat short. Maybe be a little late to my meeting.
All right.
But as far as the mushroom thing goes, I've dropped a small mushroom while harvesting once, and it had been 4 weeks or more since I had consumed mushrooms, and I heard it speak to me too, and it was sort of like, ouch, like don't drop me. I just remember how weird it was. And at first, I'm like, man, like I'm going crazy, but then later it's like, well, maybe it was real, maybe it was just my brain, just I don't know, being creative, but and then there's been other instances too where I do feel like you can hear them, they'll tell you if they're not happy, if they need more water or whatever else, but the main thing that I wanted to touch on though was just to going back to what you meant about what you talked about with smoking DMT, and I just kind of want to say, well, you can't actually smoke it, but it is a common phrase that we say, right? But what we're really doing is vaporizing it. And so, I mean, you can smoke cannabis, but you can't smoke THC. You have to vaporize that. And if you're smoking the cannabis flower, you're vaporizing the THC. And why am I being so anal about the words here? Well, I just think it's would reduce a lot of stigma against DMT if we considered it vaporization rather than smoking. But just me personally, I've had most of my spiritual experiences and the more powerful ones from DMT, mostly through subcutaneous injection of DMT.
I'm just I'm gonna keep our conversation geared towards eating mushrooms here, my man.
I get that. Well, I was wanting to say that like with the mushrooms, like I have had spiritual experiences with them too, but not to the same degree. And so I was just wondering with like, it's really hard to determine like how deep, like if I had gone as deep as you have with mushrooms, maybe my most powerful spiritual experiences would be from the mushrooms. But whether it's mushrooms or not, they are acting on DMT receptors in the brain.
Mm-hmm. Well,
that's important.
The serotonin receptors. Yeah. Psilocybin is a, what is it? 4-hydroxy DMT. I forget the exact chemical.
Right. The receptors are really tryptamine receptors, though. They got named serotonin because that was the first one that was identified to bind to them. But DMT is endogenous, and DMT acts on all of the same receptors that serotonin does.
Correct.
So they're really mimicking the DMT. Anyways.
Yeah. Well, Trip, I just wanted to comment real quick about something that you said right off the bat, where you talked about, where you dropped one, and like I've had this conversation with Eric quite a bit, where like every time I drop one, I'm like I'm so quick. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I can't believe I did. Like it's like I'm speaking, and I'm talking out loud, and I'm like looking at myself in the tent, like, yeah, you're crazy. So it's okay. I don't think that's a bad crazy. I think that's a good steward.
Where I've really felt like not a great steward at times is when I haven't harvested them and I should have, and I came home a few hours late and they were just blown up. It was just all like, oh, the canopy's all blown. Their spores are all over the place. It's like, it is what it is. But yeah, I think I love how people, when they really start working with mushrooms, they feel like that connection to the point where they want to care for them in like the most respectful way possible. People love to pick them, as just as at their prime. There's just like this beauty in it, the delicacy with which we handle it, which is really one of the this is one of the things we talk about within our trainings about like a sacrament, treating something like a sacrament. All right. Like it's not just a mundane thing, which is interesting as even as I reflect on it, how back in the day when I was just kind of, eating shrooms as a younger, more playful person, I guess, or a more recreational way, that I didn't really treat them that way. And now as I have continued to have this real sacred relationship with them, even my dried mushrooms, like we have the ovoids are stored in these really nice kind of, not actual gold obviously, but like these golden mesh bags that they just kind of like, this is something special, which really can be, if my experience anyway is that treatment of the mushroom in that special way plays into the nature of the experience that I have with it. And so it's like I appreciate what you're saying there, Trip, about kind of like the distinction between smoking and vaping, and like people talk about this like in terms of like how do I hear it? There's a way that like taking mushrooms. Some people will kind of get like not like they don't like that verbiage. Like I'm taking mushrooms. Like let's talk about it a little bit differently because the way that we talk about something has a real impact on how we experience it,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah. I think
Awesome.
that. Oh, go ahead.
Nope, I was just gonna let Trip hop on out of here. You know, he said he got to get to a meeting. Just want to say goodbye. Thanks for coming in and sharing your knowledge with us, brother. All right, good. Yeah, what were you gonna say, Jeff?
Uh, to be honest, I lost my train of thought right
All
there.
good, all good. I think another thing that's worth exploring here, speaking to, especially when it comes to the why mushrooms question, for me anyway, is the safety profile. Right,
Mhm.
mushrooms, unlike like LSD, is really safe as well. There are some crazy anecdotal stories about LSD and the just extreme doses that people have consumed. But when you think, like, I guess, like what I want to speak to here, and I'm going to be careful here because I don't. So I have seen over the years more potential for long term breaks from reality with LSD. For those of you that don't know, I've documented at least 3,000 doses of psilocybin that I've administered out to the general public. Um, in all of that time, I have seen there are two people in all of that time, two people that had not psychosis, but long term, meaning when I say long, like 4 weeks was the longest. There was one woman that I worked with, she had 2 weeks of a post experience um, ungroundedness. And there's another gentleman that had 4 weeks of, um, oh, do we lose you, Jeff? No, there you
No,
go.
I'm here.
You're good.
I had a Bluetooth connection somewhere.
Cool. But then this other guy that I worked with had about 4 weeks of he was coming close to mild psychosis. But in both of those instances, they grounded with uh, you know, effort. It wasn't completely effortlessly, but they came back to center in a relative matter of time. And I have seen other psychoactives, for sure, DMT. I've seen a lot of I've worked with a lot of people who have used psilocybin, worked with psilocybin to recover from long-term negative effects of ayahuasca experiences. So the safety profile, for those of you who don't know, and I feel like it's common knowledge, but I even heard Duncan Trussell a few years back say something about the effects from psilocybin are because you're being poisoned. Psilocybin is not only non-toxic, it's good for your brain, right? It stimulates neural growth. It is good for your brain. That doesn't mean that there aren't risk factors. That doesn't mean that it's completely like, you can just take it at a whim. As a matter of fact, taking psilocybin at a whim is probably one of the greatest risk factors for a bad trip. Well, not let's not go there. Let's not talk about bad trip. But approaching the experience with, uh, I almost want to say disrespect, is a good way to have a very challenging experience. Because, like Jeff was talking about, the mushrooms know where they're going. They also know when they're being treated with respect and when they're
Mm.
not, and they'll teach you a lesson. They'll teach some lessons. What about you? Want to share any lessons that you've learned, Jeff? You got any challenging experiences that you could speak to here?
Um, yeah, I can. There was something that I was going to speak to as well, though, and I know that Trip couldn't hang around for it, but something that you had just mentioned, and just to kind of bring this in is, my experience with DMT is my story is almost the opposite. My experience with DMT was my last experience that I had with DMT. I haven't had the desire to go back to DMT at all. Not at any point. I didn't feel like it wasn't anywhere near a spiritual type experience for me. So I just, I find that even the people that I work with, the people that I've held space for and been around and I've worked through processing and integration with, that, we all have that different, we're all different. We all have it affects us all a little bit differently. So it's interesting to hear, and I would love to hear more from Trip or from anyone later on in a different conversation about that spiritual experience in DMT, because it just wasn't something that I experienced out of it. So I just thought that was worth bringing up, that my spiritual experience has been much more impactful through mushrooms than anything. Mushrooms are what awakened my spirituality. So I just wanted to touch on that. It was very, very important to me. So difficult stories, though. Oh man. Well, holding space or in the space. So from go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, yeah, your experience. I'm more curious right now.
Yeah, my experience. Well, so I found that my experiences have evolved along the way. I found that things that were difficult in the beginning and things that I found to be almost confrontational or difficult within an experience, I have found ways through processing and integrating in my life that those things don't come up quite how they did. And the way that I approach things in the space now. But some difficult experiences that I've had. Well, I mean, the death experience or the idea that you're going to die is always a monumental experience. Even if you have it multiple times, it seems like you'll remember each time you thought you were.
We got some people talking about the death loop in the chat here too. Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. That's I see ego death, and then yeah, I'd much prefer the ego death than the death loop and being stuck in the death loop. But so for me, along the way, and even in that death experience that you're gonna die, I felt like everything was fine. I had come out of my experience. I felt like I had a medium dose, moderate experience, a lot to process, a lot of internal work, intentional reflection was going on during the experience, and I thought it was over. And I mean, I'm 5-6 hours in. I'm not really feeling this anymore, so I'm gonna go inside, clean up. I'm gonna take a shower. The moment the water hit me, I realized I was definitely not done, and I was still on mushrooms. And that's when I got hit with this huge, impactful. It was almost like this second peak. It was like this for this what seemed like a long period of time. Just being stuck in that awareness of I'm dying and I'm gonna die and this is gonna happen, and then finding a moment somehow within there to accept it and to say, well, what do I need to do? And then the moment that I have the words come out of my mouth, the moment that I have the understanding of I have no control over this, but what can I do? What are the things that I can take? It's gone. I'm out of the loop. And the more things that I've found actually with those difficult situations, that I question the thing that I need to do in the loop, or I question, that how long do I want to sit in this misery, is how I say it outside of the space, but inside the space, how long does it take before I realize I'm sitting in my own misery, right? And then what do I do about it afterwards? So I think that's where the practice comes in. Um, I'd like to talk about other difficult situations that I've had, like with the onset and with pain. A lot of people talk about discomfort in the tummy, or they may feel a little nauseous. Um, for me, I experienced that a little bit in the beginning, when I first started. I would say to consume mushrooms regularly. But I think that was just a thing that my body kind of sorted out. What I'm talking about is like physical pain, um, and also intentional emotional pain that you and I have discussed. Like, like it was really difficult, um, in the experience that I had, where first I experienced physical pain, and I experienced it in a way where I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. I've already consumed 5 grams, or this. I think this was a 3.5 gram, 3.8, something like that. Um, and this onset of pain in my body happened, but I had experienced that before, and I knew that this was my body trying to hold on to me. It was trying to hold the part of me that was about to leave. It was about to, um, it was my nervous system, something within my human trying to hold my spirit and being afraid. So this pain caused me to be back in my body. So recognizing that, and recognizing that I had felt that before, that I'd had this experience before. In this particular experience, it was like it decided to move on to something else. And then I started to get toyed with emotionally. I was told I was going to lose people that I love in my life, that this was going to happen this year, that this impending doom voice coming at me of the things that were touching my heartstrings, just pulling on them, once again keeping me attached in this body, and not allowing the medicine to push what I feel was my spirit out of this form, out of this container, and into my energetic field, to where my experience happened. um, so those are uncomfortable, from a perspective that's not so much in my head and made up, but from, I know this is happening to me, even though I know that my body is doing it to myself. I know that this is almost a self-inflicting um, tactic to try to hold myself within myself, instead of allowing me to be in my experience.
What you're speaking to there, like there was this, like you mentioned, like, is this my imagination, or where's my imagination? Where's the distinction between the imagination and what's actually happening here? And this brings up for me why it is so valuable to share these experiences with other people. I see some folks in the chat. I think Chris was talking about him and his wife having telepathic experiences, and other people talking about having shared experiences. And there were so many years where I was just consuming, eating, taking, I really don't care how you call it, mushrooms by myself. And I would have these experiences like what you're speaking to, or others, and like not know how to understand it. And it
Mm,
wasn't until regularly consuming mushrooms with others. First, it started just a handful of people like Courtney and I and some friends. And then we started doing retreats and started seeing, or started sharing experiences and hearing people share and process their experiences afterwards. And it like allowed me to really distinguish what was imagination, or what was like a fear loop or something, that, or what was actually either a part of the process that I was not really capable of understanding until having that reflection from others, or actual shared psychic, spiritual, otherworldly phenomena that when it was just me myself, I couldn't I couldn't confirm it, and because I'm such a skeptic, I wouldn't really usually believe it. And then after having these experiences with other people where one of the first for me was Courtney and I having this shared experience in the blue room. We had this room we used to trip in. And I remember like having this like entity, for lack of a better word, come to me. And afterwards, very shortly after, Courtney was like, "Oh my God, I just encountered this entity." And she described the exact same thing that I did. And so I'm just like, for you, you started out, if I'm not mistaken, you started out, well, you pretty quickly moved into communal dosing. Am I right on that or no?
Yeah, I was trying to, as you were kind of getting that question out, I was kind of trying to think. So I started with, I started with microdosing, and then I started to have some larger doses. I had a lot of fear. I was dealing with a lot of anger, a lot of PTSD, a lot of fear around, what happens if I lose control? What happens when I do? Like you had mentioned I'd done this earlier, but this was a teenager. I'm in my 40s. I'm trying to not lose my shit. Trying to keep, not trying to do something that's going to cause damage to a relationship that I've worked so hard to rebuild from damage that was caused by the PTSD and the other, like. So it's just like there was just so much fear around it. So I started so slow and low, and then it was like, so I was by myself for about 6 months, and then I had that spiritual awakening. And when I had my spiritual awakening, it was like immediately the next 3 days I found Sanctuary. It was like I have no clue how to, I have a therapist who won't talk to me about any of this, and my therapist is working really well with me on the idea that I'm microdosing, and that this is moving forward. We're doing better work than we have in years. But where do I find a place to discuss the spiritual aspect of it? How do I even understand and process that? And I was so lost and confused. Um, so I went searching on the internet, and I found Sanctuary. Um, Bringing that, so 6 months without Sanctuary, and then when I joined Sanctuary, we had a 6 month period that you had to be a member before you could attend ceremony. So I was about a year before I got into a group ceremony. Um, but wow, how impactful and how blown away I was. How incredibly different it was from the idea that I had in my head of all the things that it could be or would be, versus what it truly was, and how impacted I was by it. And um, yeah, my first community experience blew the door open to the realization of how much I needed community in my
Mhm.
life, and how big of a difference this made. And just the weekend that I spent, and the difference in the healing that I felt from the mushroom, the difference in the experience. Um, Not to say that there's not a lot of good to be had in personal experiences,
For sure.
but even being able to have a community to come back to from your personal experiences is
Mhm.
much different than being out there on your own. It's
Mhm.
much different than being by, so me being able to organize and do my own experiences, and then also attend um, ceremony experiences in a community experience. All of that is part of what Sanctuary is. Me being able to bring all of that to the table, to enjoy to get the benefits from both of it, and then to have that space to process, to have this group and this community to be able to, because for me, integration is what I do with my action. It's the processing that takes so much to get to the integration, and
Yeah.
it's not, and I'm not saying I definitely don't want to take away from anyone else who, integration is that, but for me, the work part of that word, the work part of it, the process is processing. It's really working through, well, even sometimes just working through the courage to speak the things out loud to see if I really know what I mean that I think I'm talking about.
Mm.
It's just being able to hear other people process their experiences, being able to hear people recall their own experiences that reminds me of things that they didn't even bring up that happened in my experience. We were talking about energy. We were talking about, that the energy of the experience in the community is different. It's not a vibe. It's that energetic field that you bring with you. It's the intermixing of energetic fields. It's a beautiful thing. So, yeah, my experience, and there were times where I was very afraid. I was I think I got out of the car and I told you the first time, I was like, man, I thought about turning around about 15 times. And every time I would pass the exit, I was like, you don't have to go do this. And then I would pass the exit and I would go, you're not making yourself do this. Why do you feel like you're making yourself do this? And then, but I just had all this anxiety, and but it was because of that fear. It was that fear of losing control, or of not knowing what was going to happen. And then by being in community, that shifted to a place of, I trust you, and I felt accepted, and I trust the community to hold whatever comes up. So what a huge change.
Yeah, well, I'm hearing kind of two components to this. There is the actually communing or having an experience in community, in the collective, and I see Julie talking about sharing that space with other points of light. That is a beautiful way to put it. There's something so powerful about what, like, observing others process, having my own process in the midst of that, and what is maybe not spoken of nearly enough even in psychedelic communities is the real importance and value in continuing to show up in community after the experience. And like, I've never really heard it. Like, we've said these words over and over. You and I have these conversations over and over and over, but I never really separated the two until you just said it: the processing and the integration. Like, as I heard that, I'm experiencing, like, I've just kind of always lumped it together, right? Integration is processing, processing is integration. But what we see more and more, and for me, I worked for, God, better part of Sanctuary is only 5 years old. So I've been eating mushrooms 25 years. For 20 years, I had tons of mushroom experiences in community with people, and then would not be in community with those people after the mushroom experiences, right? So, like, maybe like 5 or 10 of us eating mushrooms or whatever it is, and even on these retreats that we led, having all these people, and we'd have all these powerful bonding experiences, and then you might keep up with people and maintain contact, but not being in an active community where we are intentionally reflecting on our personal growth and who we are as humans through the mirroring of others around us. And I've talked about this publicly a fair amount. I saw someone else earlier mentioning in the chat way earlier, like, I am all 9 traits of borderline personality, BPD. And it is notoriously one of the most challenging and untreatable mental health conditions out there. It's the freaking trifecta. It's got elements of schizophrenia, treatment resistant depression, and bipolar. And so, also, I saw too in the chat there, who was it? I can't get to scroll up on me. Yeah, I can't. Stabs to be, XO. There is absolutely hope. There is absolutely hope. If someone like me, who has been suicidally depressed for the vast majority of my life, and psilocybin would help for a while, and then, like 2 weeks or 2 months goes by and I find myself in the same pit. The thing that has really truly helped is psilocybin in combination with community that I continue to show up to. And it's fucking hard to keep showing up in community after the mushrooms are done, because that's when the integration really happens. You can do all your processing, you can talk through your experiences, you can sit and do your qigong or whatever the kind of processing is. But when we take those lessons, those hard lessons that we often learn from those reflections in those group experiences or solo experiences, we take those lessons and truly start to integrate them into our being through active community. I am, and my wife is the only person that can truly attest to this. We've been married 12 years, but I know that she would tell people that in the last 3 to 4 years since I have been, Sanctuary took a good year to get going. But now that I have been really, truly continuing to show up in community for 3 or 4 years, I have made more progress in the last 3 to 4 years than I have made in 2 decades with Zoloft, with therapy, with psychedelics alone, with you name it, religion, and all that other stuff. And so it's like, I don't want to be like evangelical, and I'm not, but I have experienced and seen so powerfully how incredibly valuable to real integration into my being community is, like showing up in community. And like, even that, I'm on a rant here, but I'll stop after this because it just like, it feels important to say that there are so many of these words that we just kind of throw around, right? Love, community, whatever. Like, community is the one I'm focused on right now. We throw around this word about community, and for most people, community means like, some people that you hang out with and you see every now and then, but that's not what community is. Real community is when we show up and we keep showing up when it fucking sucks, when it's hard, when we don't feel like it, when we see our shadow or we see the shadow of others, and we're tempted to run the other way. We're tempted to say, oh no, I don't want to look at this piece of myself, so I'm gonna like make up some excuse why I'm not showing up in community right now. Or I don't like that other person, they trigger me, they make me uncomfortable, so I'm gonna make up some excuse as to why I'm not going to be in community. But real community is continuing to show up even when we don't want to. That's the growth edge. So that's my rant.
I didn't know we were talking about real stuff. Dang. This has been one of the most impactful things that I have learned along the way. My growth does not come from comfort. And I can be happy and comfortable, and everything can be really cool with everybody who's happy and comfortable together. But when people are walking through discomfort, when you get to see, you and I had this conversation, just this metaphor, when you get to see the juice that squeezes out, when your juice is squeezed out and you're embarrassed, when you're upset or frustrated or feel disrespected or you're triggered, this is the community I want to be in. This is where I grow. Everything else I was running from. And so yeah, just bring it, that is one of the realest things, the most present things in my life is the people that come into my life, and they express this joy and this love, and then things get hard, and then they disappear, and that makes me question, what is love?
Mm.
And what is love to me? Because I want to present myself differently. I want to be different. And a lot of things happen in love, and sometimes we need time to process a lot of things. But uh, being being in a community with people, learning to love people, learning to accept people for who they are, and watch them grow, watch them change, watch their lives be impacted, um, watch them go through the hard, the difficult, the triggers, uh, and watch them come out on the other side, and then to see the bond, to see the strength, to see the difference that makes in community that sticks together. You know, you can run if you want, but you're just going to run from the next time you're triggered. You're going to run every time you're triggered. It's one of our one of our agreements is own your experience.
Mm.
And like it's like every time I get to talk about that, owning your experience, it's so important to talk about that. If you're triggered, if something happens in this community, if something happens in this space, if something happens in this meeting, this is what we're here for. This is what this is about. This is the safe space that you came to. Don't be afraid to explore. Don't be afraid to grow just because it felt uncomfortable for a minute.
Mm.
Because we're here to stand with you on the other side. And that's who I want. That's what I want. I want people to be there to stand with me on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
know.
Can I
But
ask you
yeah,
a question?
yeah. Go
I
ahead.
hope it's not too long. Like again, like if you don't feel like going into it, but um, so one of the things I've heard from veterans over the years is that coming back into civilian society, one of the challenging pieces of that is that for the most part in civilian society there isn't that somebody's really got your back,
Mm.
that there's not that like that sense of that fraternity or that we're in this together.
Oh, there's
And
definitely a. Oh,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm just kind of curious, like, and this is not to, I mean, I don't mind, like, plug Sanctuary. Sanctuary is amazing. We're doing amazing stuff here. That's not really why, but I'm like, authentically, I'm curious. Um, if you're getting a need met within our community that you if you're getting that need met in our
Mm.
community that you're not that you wouldn't have gotten elsewhere, maybe. Does it make
Yeah,
sense what I'm asking?
yeah. It does. It does. I would agree with that. I would. I would say I haven't really thought about it from that perspective. Um, but one of the things uh, that I missed the most was camaraderie.
Mhm.
I miss the ability to be able to disagree with people and to uh, argue and fight and be angry and frustrated with people and know that they still have my back.
Mhm.
Know that they were going to be there tomorrow. Not show up. Not even show up tomorrow with too much of a remembrance of what happened today.
Mm.
They're just going to be there. So uh, I got used to that. I definitely felt a lot of alone. It was one of the biggest reasons that I continued on the path of being a government contractor for so long. Um, it was just that camaraderie. It was the same reason that what I didn't realize at the time though was that my need and want and desire for that camaraderie was also feeding, fueling, and extending my PTSD.
Mhm.
So when I got away from all that, it was, I was very alone. I was on an island. Like I said, I was afraid to come to a community event because, I wasn't even really at a place where I really cared too much about what you guys thought of me, but what happens if I hurt somebody? What happens if I do something that I wasn't in
Mm-hmm.
control of,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not in a safe space, you know, like, um, so I just had a lot of fear for that. But coming into the community, it's a different camaraderie. There's a where I would say what I felt in the military was the truest thing that I knew. Um, it was like high school sports. It was like kind of like living high school. It was still like having people there all the time, having people that were um, uh, like-minded around you. You know, even though we still have the same. We still have the same verbiage. We use the same terminology. We're you know, even though we might have different opinions, and we're still together and alike. And I found myself very lost. So in this community, though, I think I found a different style. And when I say that, I didn't realize that the military camaraderie that I had was a toxic camaraderie. And what I'm finding here and in this community, and what I'm getting is yes, it is meeting that need. Yes, it is filling that void that I had in my life, but it's doing it from a place of transparency and communication and accountability, uh, that comes from a place of love and not necessity. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so the feeling is different,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially that love and not necessity. You know, because it's like not everybody within our community is like is really has that camaraderie, but you know when they do that it's because they really want to. It's
Right.
a love thing. I love that. And it also highlights to me, you know, again, the thing that we've talked about a lot is how you and I would have never fucking met in those two
Right.
worlds. We'd have never been like the friends that we are. And
You know, that goes back to that first community thing. You know, like I was absolutely blown away that I was finding myself not only talking to people that I never would have talked to, but I was interested in talking to them. I wanted to know more about what they had to say. Uh, where I was so judgmental before, I was so, you know, like you said, I mean, it would have just been like, man, who's this weird mushroom dude? Like, I don't know, man. He's, you know, but look at what I would have missed, you know.
same,
So
same.
it mushrooms really opened my heart from a place not so much that I need them for my heart to be open, but they made me realize how closed it was. They
Mm,
helped me
mm,
along the way to find a better way.
mhm, mm,
And
mm,
I'm
love
still opening things. They're still helping me open doors that I didn't even know that I closed. You and I are having conversations and things are coming up that I've closed off for so long, but you'll say something that triggers it in my mind, and it's like, oh man, bro, I got a story, I got this, I got that, you know.
mhm,
And it's like I forgot half of this shit because I've blocked it out. I was so afraid, you know, to process any. I was so afraid to think about any of it,
mhm,
um, because it was never a good thing. You know, it was nice to be able to tell you a cool story, you know, something that was like, hey, this is kind of funny, or you know, that had humor or fun to it, versus the ones that, you know, the stories I've remembered so long for so long are the not those.
mhm. Yeah, yeah, to be able to just have a different frame of reference, different way of looking at a thing, remembering a thing.
Yep.
Yeah, so we got about 17 minutes left here. I'm gonna switch gears just real quick. So again, y'all, those who are still with us or anybody that's listening after the fact, this is a preview to our 3-day workshop that Jeff and I are going to be given here. This is way informal. We've got a much more formal presentation of information that we're going to be talking about the relationship with the mushroom, cultivation of mushrooms. We're going to be talking about the oh my gosh, I'm blanking. Community, like takeaway, actionable understandings of why and how to apply community to working with the mushrooms. And
Mm.
what I like for us to talk about right now, that is one of the more valuable kind of working knowledge components to have, particularly in a community like ours, is the RFRA. So the RFRA is the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. From this conversation that we have had so far, and from the conversation that I have seen in the chat here, like in my world, growing up Catholic, being told what a sacrament is, psilocybin is undeniably a sacrament. It is a portal that opens us up to the sacred, like Jeff was just saying, helps us see parts of our hearts and parts of ourselves that are closed off. This is something that when we commune with in a conscientious, intentional, sincere way, look, I'm 25 years deep. There is no ceiling to this. I continue to grow spiritually through working with this sacrament, and even more so in conscientious community. Chris, I see that was you with the BPD. Oh, dude, we're gonna talk BPD. I'm all 9 of them, baby. All 9, all 9. We'll save that chat for later, though. So RFRA is a crucial component of what we're doing at Sanctuary. It's a crucial component of any of the sacred medicine, plant medicine churches that are out there going on. And it is really what all of this is leveraged around. So far, right now, as things stand, and hopefully will continue to be the case, we have constitutional religious freedom in this country of ours. We are one of the only countries in the world that has that. I had no idea years ago that that was a thing. I thought religious freedom was just like global. Not at all. Not at all. And it is such an incredible and important right that we assert and maintain in this country. So, constitutionally, we have the right to religious freedom. And at the same time, there has been persecution of groups, individuals who have used particularly plant medicines as a sacrament. Now, there are multiple Supreme Court rulings that have eventually began to turn the tide there. We talk about those in more detail in the 3-day workshop and other courses that we provide or offer. But I'd like for us just to kind of have a little bit of a conversation here, Jeff, about this, because aside from having a working knowledge of how the RFRA works, another component to having positive outcomes to our work with mushrooms is that sense of safety, right? Like I had no idea when I started doing the retreats in Jamaica, it blew me away. I mean, I kind of suspected it would be the case, but when you start taking people into a place where psychedelics are legal and they start having their experiences, the level of paranoia and fear and all that background that's there, it just opens up the experience to so much more. It's just accessible to so much more insights and like like real meaningful experience that doesn't have that noise of, oh shit, I'm doing something illegal. And the RFRA is a crucial component to that within Sanctuary, again, and any other plant medicine churches out there working. So I'm not going to ask you to go like, I'm not going to quiz you per se, Jeff, on the RFRA. I know you're well versed in it. But I would love for you to talk about maybe how that has impacted or assisted your kind of day to day or working relationship with the sacrament.
Yeah, yeah. So I was, I was really glad um, to learn about the RFRA, and then excited to really understand it. So I guess from my perspective, just in my own words, it's kind of I have the right to practice uh, my spirituality in a way that's authentic, the way that's sacred to me, regardless of whether I'm part of anything. I have that right individually,
Mhm.
and I have that right to gather in ceremony. I have that right to use sacraments. There are some requirements. Like we need to use them responsibly. Um, there's sincerity, but I live out my faith as part of my sincerity, and I don't feel like that's something um, that doesn't fall within the guidelines of the RFRA. And what that means to me is that um, what it meant to me was that you have those rights, and you have just as much of the ability to claim those rights as I do. And that really transformed part of my thinking, especially when it came to space holding and the idea that I was holding space for you. And I'm not holding space for you. You are partaking in your religious freedom. You
Yes.
are partaking in your rights, and I am volunteering my time to just help you feel safe while you're
Mhm.
there. And like to understand it from that perspective changed my point of view. It made me feel safe, safe enough to practice and safe enough to hold space for others, safe enough where I just I felt protected. And then I felt by being involved in Sanctuary and us following the RFRA and us being involved in teaching the RFRA and me being able to prove and show my sincerity through not through my eyes or your eyes, but unfortunately the government's eyes, right? Whoever's going to look at me for this and want me to prove my sincerity. This is what I'm doing. I'm following all the steps I'm doing, and I'm not doing it just to cover that RFRA steps. I was doing this anyways. This just was like a blanket cover that made me feel secure and
Mhm.
safe. So it gave me the confidence that was, especially in the beginning, when I was just learning to fill out Sanctuary, when I didn't really know, 100% what it was all about. And even just learning that gave me a new confidence in,
Mhm.
in how I move forward with what I've done. So it just, it I really appreciate the minister course that you broke down the RFRA and explained it to me in such a way that I went and that I researched it more, and that I was able to um, then, not only that, but being in the ministry courses over and over and participating in that conversation, hearing it from so many different perspectives, from so many different people,
Mhm.
it was like that's where it really kind of broke down, and I really got a lot of that understanding. But yeah, so it was very impactful for me, and knowing that I have those rights, knowing that you have those rights, knowing that we are doing absolutely nothing wrong, and also feeling protected enough that those that don't know about the RFRA, it's up to you to prove that I wasn't being sincere. It's up
Right.
to you. You have to prove all that. So like I said, just feeling more supported, feeling better about what I was doing. And that just made feeling better made me do better. It just made
Mhm.
me be able to pour more of me in um, without that unwanted energy of that anxiety or
Mhm.
that hiding feeling. No.
Yeah, it's a kind of a subconscious or unconscious component of set and setting. Like you can't help
Right.
that for it not to be there. And when you have that knowledge, so there's a couple of things about the RFRA. Not gonna go into tons of detail tonight with it. We'll probably maybe get into a little bit more on Sunday. Definitely on the 3-day thing. If you are interested in the 3-day mini course that we're doing next weekend, you can hit that QR code. It'll give you a registration link, I believe, is what Courtney set us up there. uh, but like you kind of touched on this, that yes, this is our constitutional right and individual personal right. And because we are, like there is a real reason to keep the public safe. Okay. So like I know of a church that is trying to set up let's use the example that I always love to use, right? Kentucky, the snake churches, right? Like they have fucking rattlesnake churches in Kentucky where people dance around with rattlesnakes, and like if you get bit and you don't die, it means you're being good in God's eyes or whatever, right? Like that shit is insane, and it is a legitimate threat to public health, right? The RFRA does not give people the right to actually put people in harm's way. Okay. So there's reason for there to be certain requirements and stipulations that are met for the RFRA to hold up in court for our constitutional right. Like there's all kinds of any number of crazy religions that we could imagine up that would be harmful to the public or to individuals. Our religious freedoms, just like our freedom of speech, doesn't give us the right to scream fire in a crowded theater and endanger people. Our religious freedom does not give us the right to put people in harm's way. So there are, I believe that these are, there maybe some of them are a little, I don't know if they're too stringent, but what you said, Jeff, that it is incumbent upon the government to prove that we are not sincere. It is incumbent on them to prove that we are putting people in harm's way. That gives us an enormous amount of leverage in working with the sacrament as we choose. And it's
And
one of the reasons. What you were saying? Go ahead.
well, I was just going to jump in there, and if I'm remembering it correct, it's also it's not it's like it's a compelling, right? You have to have a compelling reason, and then also the way that they are doing it, they have to prove that there is like a not no less effective or no less restrictive
No,
way,
right.
right? So it's not just one thing. It just I
And
like the way that it's holding them accountable. It's
yes,
holding,
for sure.
you know, I, yeah.
For sure. One important thing I would love to point out here, while there are some folks that are looks like are kind of newer to this information, is that an important stipulation that Sanctuary has been very, very careful to follow, and there have been instances where this has been called to task, is that multi-sacrament churches are not they are not fully protected under the RFRA. The basic premise of the RFRA is that if the existence of your religious organization, your spiritual community, is contingent upon the use of a single sacrament, then the government has to prove a compelling interest to stop your community from using this sacrament, and that there is no other less restrictive way to maintain public safety than to restrict your sacrament. Psilocybin has been proven safe and effective. The Compass Pathways, big corporation. Compass Pathways, the corporation that tried to patent soft chairs and soft music for psychedelic therapy, was granted expedited, um, um, not access, but uh, the legalization of psilocybin therapy for Compass Pathways was expedited, and is the timeline has been shortened from 2 years to 9 months to 12 months. This happened 2 days ago, right? There is so much proof, scientific proof, historical proof, that psilocybin mushrooms are safe and effective, and they do what they're purported to do. Okay. So it's going to be very difficult for the government to prove that psilocybin mushrooms are harmful to public health. That's another, there is more reason, all the more reason to have safe containers and safe communities where this work is being done in, so that, again, public safety is maintained and that doesn't become a threat to the RFRA. But just understanding that there's a ton of, it's a nuanced conversation. A lot of it is even the legalese is written intentionally to be subjective, right? So sincerity is a very subjective term, and yet it is the litmus test of whether or not you are protected under the RFRA. So there's a whole lot that goes into that, and we'll have more detailed conversations about that in the 3-day thing again, like I said. But I do want to point out, just because there's a lot of folks talking about it. And I'm not saying that it's like, I'm not saying that being a member of a multi-sacrament church is means you're not protected, but there are precedents where churches who were multi-sacrament churches were shut down, legally shut down, because they were multi-sacrament churches. So it's just a nuanced conversation. There's so much to it. And it is like what you said, Jeff, I think is so valuable that the ongoing conversations around this and so many of these topics is so crucial to our full understanding and applied understanding, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. So we are at 7:59. That went a little faster than I had hoped it would, but that's fine. It leaves us more to talk about there in terms of the RFRA and religious protection and why that's so valuable. Another piece of this for me anyway, and we've talked about this, like I would not have joined Sanctuary for like 6 months. I would have been stalking. I would have been like, I ain't joining no crazy. You talking about a church? I got so much church trauma. There's no way. Now that I am in the midst of it for so long as the founder, one of the founders, it's like, oh man, this is the way for me anyway. This is like the best approach that I have experienced in all my years of working with psilocybin. So anyway, that's a whole other big conversation.
I
Jeff, you
wouldn't have left church if it felt like this.
got
Right.
there is an
I mean, it's-
incredible opportunity to reframe and reclaim church for like personal experience and intentional community. So you got anything you want to say, Jeff, before we head out here?
Oh, what a good conversation. Look forward to the next one.
Likewise, man. We tend to have good conversations. So this is like our second 90-minute wonderful conversation of the day.
Right. Right.
Thanks everybody so much for joining in, and love to see all the conversation in the chat. Really appreciate your participation and just being here sharing this space with us. Hope to see you if you're available on Sunday, same time. Look out for those live streams. And again, if you want to connect to the 3-day workshop, hit that QR code and we'll hope to see you there. All right. Much love, everybody. Much love.